My name is Seth Burgett. I'm CEO and founder of Gateway Bronco. Really, I grew up with both my parents being school teachers. So they didn't have a lot of money, but they had time in the summers. And so what I learned from those experiences is every summer was building something. Building a garage, building a deck, building something. And what I loved to do was working on small engines in my mom and dad's woodshed, which was a great woodshed. It had windows and it had concrete floor, and it didn't have any wood in it in the summer. So it was my playground. And so by age 12, I had started a small engine repair. And I had a little bit of savings. I took $200 out of savings, invested in a set of small tools and a toolbox, which I still have here today, and built out a little business in small engines. And the first lesson in business school that I had was age 12 or 13, when I went into the 1,800 person town's small engine repair shop to buy parts. I literally rode my bike over there to buy my points and my plugs and my air filters to do the work I was doing. And I had this whole list of product I needed, and the guy behind the counter said, out of stock, don't have it. And I said, well, that air filter's right on the wall. He said, not available. And I thought, this guy isn't gonna sell me any one of the parts on my list. I just impacted his market share. Because all those people that had tillers in the spring that wouldn't start and lawnmowers that were breaking down, instead of taking them to him, they bring them to me. I had a whole line outside of my woodshed of tillers and lawnmowers and broken cords out of the Briggs & Stratton engines, and I'd fix them all day long. And I'd do it for $15, $10, and I impacted his market share. So what I did is I rode my bike over to my buddy's house. His older sister drove us to the town over, and we bought our parts. And that's where I learned market share. So the second lesson was in investment. And I invested in a set of tools that were paying some big dividends, right? $10 at a time for every little job I did. But I also found I bought 3 weed eaters. And I thought, you know, if I invest $90, which was a lot of money back then, into 3 weed eaters, I could probably take the one and take all the parts off of it to fix the other 2 and then sell the other 2. And that's how I learned venture investing. You invest something, you add value to it, and then you can sell the 2 for way more than what you invested originally. And so those little lessons, looking back at it years later, were super powerful, right? Market share and in venture investing. So that then led to bigger things, which were cars. And so by age 14, I started painting cars. I had a huge passion of turning something that looked gnarly into something beautiful. And the first one was my dad's car that was in the 70s, 80s, and started rusting and had a big rust hole in the rocker panel. So I fixed it. Through middle school and high school, I spent a lot of time in extracurricular activities. Academics were a huge part of my background, but so were extracurriculars. I was involved in everything from track, basketball, thespians, every possible activity I could find, I just soaked up. For whatever reason, I soaked it up all through middle school and high school. And then as I went into college, really I kind of did that same thing. It took me 6 years to get through my undergrad. And it was in part because I was so deeply involved in the extracurricular activities. So a lot of lessons learned throughout college, but one of those was from an early mentor my freshman or sophomore year. And he described it like this. He said, communication is everything. If you can't communicate your idea to your peer or to your boss, your invention won't go anywhere. I'd worked so hard from age 6 until I was in my 20s now, graduating from college, and I was a week away from graduation. I was getting married in a week, so right after graduation I was getting married. I had a job offer, which was great, my dream job at McDonnell Douglas, and from that piece of paper I had a mortgage. So I couldn't believe it, but I got a mortgage for a house. I just sat back and I said, wow, what's next in life? And the one thing that came to me is taking this technical acumen and doing something important for others. And I had a strong passion around medical devices, and so I said, I'm going to use this background to improve the quality of life for others. I had no idea even what that meant, but I said, okay, over the next 10 years, I'm gonna find a way to improve the quality of life for others and at the same time get involved in a technology startup. 10-year goals, no idea how to get there, but that was it. And I made a decision not to go back to graduate school against my parents' strongest input and go work in the world. So I started off working in the robotics industry, and that was a deep passion of mine to build robotics, and that robotics background led me into medical devices, which was finally achieving that 10-year goal only a few years, 5 or so years after graduation. And it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Truly believe it was once in a lifetime, and I gave it everything I had. And that was developing a robot to navigate guide wires through the brain using a joystick. So what happened is you've got 2 medical students that goes to their professor and says, hey, we've got this idea to navigate through the brain. They didn't know how to do it, but they had an idea. And they founded a company, and they hired a CEO to run the company, former founder of Trek Bicycle, and then they were looking for an engineer to bring those pieces together. And so I was the engineer with the background in robotics, and we started on a journey. We built the first robot to navigate guide wires through the brain using a joystick, and following that, found that there wasn't a real market opportunity in neurology. They're what's called aneurysms and AVMs, but they're rare in comparison to heart disease. So we found that we could use similar technology in the heart, and we transitioned everything over to cardiology, came up with a brand new invention for doing that in cardiology, and we're the world's first, ultimately, to do transcontinental heart surgery. So the physician was in Boston, live on the Jumbotron at a Heart Rhythm Association meeting, joystick in hand, and the patient was in Milan, Italy. That was the pinnacle of my technical career and led to a global management background, managing integrations with Siemens and Philips Medical in Europe and installations around the world. So the journey through medical devices really closed with this amazing experience in medical device robotics. And I came to, we're fixing people that have really bad illnesses. And all of a sudden in my life, I came to the conclusion, we need to go prevent things from happening. So I went from fixing or abating problems to how do you prevent these problems from occurring? So I was training for Ironman and came to the conclusion that my ears hurt worse than my legs after a 6-hour workout. And I was still developing medical devices at the time, but thinking, how can we prevent illnesses from occurring? So in my own life, I was trying to do that. I was training, exercising, getting healthy, getting fit, preventing those things that could happen later in life. And at that time, I was about 36, 37, 38 years old, and came up with the idea for a company called YourBuds. And YourBuds is a headphone that stays in your ear and doesn't hurt. It was the perfect kind of mashup of medical devices, business, and my personal mission to help other people. And so one of the things that was so amazing about YourBuds is it was happening at a time when the iPod was just hitting its mark. So this would have been 2007 when the idea hit, 2008 when we launched the company. We hit this at a time where there's tremendous growth in headphones, and the company grew from 0 to 50 million in sales in 5 years. We took on Sony, Philips, and Sennheiser in North America that had 60% market share. And within 3 years, we owned 40% of that market share. A few more years, we were #1 in the world and had sold our company to JBL. I worked with the buyer for about 18 months and then made a clear decision I was going to take a year sabbatical. And in that year, I wanted to just decompress, understand, and kind of get clarity for where I wanted to go with the balance of my career. And honestly, the rest of my life, I wanted to understand how I wanted to use those years. So by the time I sold YourBuds, I would have been 45 years old. So kind of at this point where I wanted to figure out what was next, and I took a whole year to do that. Along the way, I always wanted to be a car collector. So over about 3 or 4 months, built out a collection of 2 Shelbys and 15 or so all original paint Broncos. So I have a deep passion around barn finds. I've been searching the barns of Illinois since I was a young child, and actually have the first barn that I searched around that had an old Hudson and an old Corvair in it. And really just expanded on that. So buying and collecting to me wasn't having, it was acquiring. It was going out to the barn, finding the Bronco, closing the deal, and digging the old Bronco out of the barn, getting it running, and honestly driving it home. I had this short trip with my wife to the Smoky Mountains, and we had this experience where it was beautiful. There were 500 Broncos in one place at one time for the 50th anniversary of the Bronco. It was amazing. My wife said, wow, how many colors did they have of Broncos back at that time? It's like Skittles, because we're a single file going through the Smoky Mountains. And then later that night, she came to the conclusion, I think I'm done road tripping with these things. They're hot in the day, cold at night, it's smelly, and I'm tired of getting in and out of your Bronco in a bucket. And every time I'd have to get out, go get a little bucket, she could get in and out of the Bronco. And so, she was looking for security, she was looking for reliability, because the tools in the back kind of, they freaked her out. She said the words, it makes me nervous, those tools in the back. And so, she was looking for security. And this was spring of 2016. By the time we get to summer of 2016, I was thinking about starting this business. Then took a cross-country trip with our oldest child, who was a 17-year-old at the time, who said, hey Dad, why don't we take one-year-old Broncos and let's go to Walden Pond. And so our 17-year-old, we had to have a sushi date once a month, and she came up with this great idea to take one of the old Broncos and to go to Walden Pond. And I thought to myself, East Coast, probably 16 hours or so, no big deal. I was in my year sabbatical. I said, well sure, let's do it. And we're going through dinner, we're having dinner. She goes, we get there, why don't we just turn and go to California? I was like, wow. This 17-year-old who didn't want to spend any time with me from age 13 to 17, all of a sudden wants to have sushi date with me once a month, and now wants to go on a road trip. And now it's a big road trip. I found a little Bronco, it's a perfect Bronco, original paint, and a little 65 tent camper. My daughter and I start off on this journey, and we actually started posting about this on Facebook, our journey cross country. And going 5,000 miles together, we learned that Bronco in every possible way. We're pulling a camper. We've got a Baja rack on top with a mountain bike. And of course, we've got a fuel can, because we only have 2 hours of fuel going across big sky country. So with 2 fuel tanks inside the Bronco, you still only have 2 hours of driving. So we're learning this Bronco inside and out. Its great characteristics and some of its weaknesses. And so through this whole 5,000 mile journey, Facebook is exploding. People are deeply passionate about what's happening on this journey, that I was thinking about starting a company, but I thought we would just tell our story of going cross country. And at the same time, we were learning the Bronco in a deep way. We four-wheeled in the Bronco, we adventured in the Bronco, we did everything in this Bronco. We worked on the Bronco alongside the road. And so this gave me a depth of knowledge of the vehicle and the clarity for what the consumer was looking for. Our daughter was looking for adventure. My wife was looking for security and comfort. We've essentially brought both of those things together with Gateway Bronco, providing a 5-year warranty, reliable vehicle with Porsche leather, King Ranch leather. It's comfortable, it's reliable, it's fun, and it is adventure. It is a lifestyle vehicle. No one's doing it like we're doing it, and no one can. We have a 60,000 square foot Bronco factory. Everything is under one house. The Bronco comes in one door and it doesn't leave until it's ready to go to the customer. We have powder coating in-house, paint and body in-house, metal fab in-house. Everything is done in-house except for stitching. point blank. We're the only Bronco factory in the nation, and this is what we do every day.